Hi, welcome to another Seeing with Stars podcast. I'm Steph Johnson, and I'm excited to bring this podcast to you because I have released a series of ebooks, zodiac sign ebooks, but more on them later. They're all about the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. And that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. So we call these the big three in astrology because they are the three most personal points. Now, most of you will know your sun sign, although I have had people, even someone the other day, who said, I'm not sure if I'm a Cancerian or a Gemini because I was born on June 21. And yes, it can vary from year to year. So you do need to know the exact date for your sun sign. And sometimes it changes during the day. So I had one client who was right on the cusp and she wasn't sure what time of the day she was born, and the sun changed signs on that day. She remembered it was during a storm, so I went back and I looked up all the storm records and everything. Now, I have determined in my astrological know-how which one I think she is, but she was trying to decide between a Gemini and a Taurus. So you can have some ambiguity, if you like, about your sun sign. But if you say to me, I was born on the cusp, then usually if I look up the day and the year, there's a lot of clarification for that. So you either be the late degrees of one sign or the early degrees of another. So what does the sun tell you about? You will have heard me say many a time that sun sign astrology is fantastic, but astrology is much more complex than that. The sun is a great introduction. And it's really interesting because back in the day when I first started astrology, it wasn't so much part of the common language. Whereas now, astrology really is part of the common language. How many times do you see or hear or introduce yourself as, oh, well, that's typical because I'm a Virgo? I hear it more and more on the news and on social media. And even I was looking at a bookshop the other day and somebody has a book. I'm not sure what it's, I'm going to look it up, but it's called I Blame My Virgo Sun. So that's really interesting because I think sun sign astrology, they're like 1 in 12 people obviously have or are born at a particular time of year. So we need to do a deep dive into astrology to go further than the sun sign. But the sun is the center of our particular Earth solar system. And so the sun does play a vital role on life on Earth and in our lives. It's our personality, our self expression, and it's important that we are able to have the freedom to be authentic and express ourselves in the way that our sun sign requires. Now, I suggest you look at some of my earlier podcasts on are you a typical sun sign? So, are you a typical Sagittarian? Are you a typical Cancerian? Because you will find that there are influences from other planets. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm talking about a typical sun sign. So, a typical Virgo or a typical Libra, for instance. So, understanding the energy of your sun is a really good starting point to understanding yourself and to exploring astrology. This is how we shine. Literally, the sun shines, and this is how you shine in your own life. So, looking up your sun sign and understanding more about your sun sign is really important. And back in the day, Linda Goodman's book, All About Astrology, really highlighted that the sun sign could really speak to you and kind of give you permission just to be yourself, to be authentic. But where do we go or where do we start after the sun sign? And this is where we can do a deep dive into astrology. Now, over the years, many people have come across my path buying the software that I sell and coming to the high teas. And some people have just been interested in exploring their own astrology and that of their family and friends. And some wanted to take it further afield, to become teachers or to really either have it as a side hustle or their main job. But where do you start? You've got to start somewhere. And I think the big three are the very best place to start. So that's the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. Now, the first thing you have to do to go beyond sun sign astrology is to know your time of birth. Now, you can know an approximation for the moon. The moon moves fairly quickly, but usually it will be 1 or 2 moons in a particular day. So if you're born on a particular day, it might be really clear. If you see that your moon is in the middle degrees of a sign, so say 15 degrees of Leo, then it's likely, unless you were born at an extreme time of the day, like early morning or late at night, then your moon will be Leo. But obviously it's good to know the time of birth. But the moon is the next one I would look at, because this is our emotions. This is how we feel. It's not about how we shine or how we express ourselves out generally, socially, but it's how we are in our private lives. This is very much influenced by our early childhood, our early upbringing, our relationship with the first warm and caring caregiver, usually the mother, but not always the mother. But the real warm and caring caregiver is the moon. So our moon tells us a lot about our emotions. It also then tells us about how we connect with other people. How were our first connections? Were they all warm and lovely, or were they somewhat fraught? Was the main caregiver in our life in a really good place in their lives, or were they feeling stressed? This can all be told by the moon. But if you just want to look at something generally speaking, just look at your moon. If your moon's in Taurus, what that means to you. If your moon's in Sagittarius, what that means to you. A moon in Taurus is going to want routine and comfort. A moon in Sagittarius is going to want adventure. Now, as a little baby, that could be, I see those mothers pushing pushers or prams and running behind them, to get their exercise. Now, a little baby with a moon in Sagittarius is going to love that. Moon in Taurus, you have to make sure they're really comfy, cozy in that pram before you do something like that. So this is about you looking at maybe your children or yourself and looking at how you got your nurturing, how you got your love and warmth and what you actually need. And again, understanding ourselves is a great key to freedom. And to me, freedom is about being authentic. It's about being authentically ourselves and how we need to not be getting our needs met according to society's influence. So in other words, if we want to, let's go back to the 1950s, where a woman was expected to be at home, to be the chief cook, bottle washer, nurturer, dinner on the table at a particular time. Some women, some people would thrive in that situation. That was society's expectation. So your moon will tell you, well, actually, no or yes, I don't want to, because society changes, the rules change. And this moon will tell you, well, these are my needs, not what society or parents or anyone else expects, but this is what I need. And therefore, the moon is key. I always look at it in relationships, because often we can express ourselves in terms of our personality, but when we link up with another person, when we have a union with somebody very close to us, then we switch from the sun to the moon and our emotional needs. So what's the third one? The third one is the ascendant. Now this is the one that if you don't know your birth time is going to be quite tricky, because the ascendant is very time sensitive. So often people will say to me in a social situation, oh, I'd love to come and see you as an astrologer. That would be great, and ask me a few details about what I do. And the first thing I ask them is, do you know your time of birth? And if they say no, I say the same thing all the time, which is, please find it out. A parent, a living relative, a baby book, sometimes the hospital records, depending on the age of the person. Even if you don't come and see me, please find that time of birth, because if you ever want to go and see an astrologer, this is what they'll ask you. And this is because the ascendant or the rising sign sets the chart. It sets the houses. And the houses in astrology give so much information. Now, I'm not talking about houses at the moment, but I'm talking about the ascendant and what that means. And the other thing is, when we're little or when we're young, the ascendant is not so prominent. It's more our sun, our moon, and other planets. But the ascendant is what we are to be integrating into our lives as we get older. Yes, it will set the scene a little bit when we're young. There's no doubt that we will peer out through the world to the world through our ascendant, but it's also what we need to turn into our kind of superpower, if you like, as we get older. So, for instance, in my case, I have a lot of Sagittarius. When I was younger, I was not so good at being reliable or consistent. My ascendant is Taurus, and Taurus is very good at being consistent. So, over the years, I've learned to combine the two and really be consistent and reliable, and that Taurus side of me has come out more and more. So, you can find out your ascendant. Now, when I studied traditional astrology, the ascendant was all about health and happiness, and I've certainly found that to be true as I've seen people throughout my life as a consultant. I think the ascendant can be the physical body as well. So, what makes you happy? And of course, the healthier you are, the more that you are happy. But I also think that in this day and age, in more modern times, we are happiest when we are treating our body like a temple and when we are fulfilling our soul purpose. And so esoteric astrology say that this sensitive, time-sensitive point in the chart, the ascendant, also tells us about our soul purpose, that we are happiest when we are fulfilling a purpose. So, what sign was rising when we were born? And this can change in some cases minute to minute. So, as I said before, it's a time sensitive point. But what sign is rising as we were born? And so, therefore, what are we looking to? What lights up our lives? What do we need to incorporate into the rest of our lives in order to feel really fulfilled? So, these are the big three. These are a great place to start if you're beginning your astrology journey, and they're also a really wonderful way to revisit, even if you've been doing astrology for a long time. So, would you like to know more about your big three, the sun, the moon, and the ascendant? This is where I'm really excited at the moment because I'm launching a series of very short but colourful and informative ebooks that you can purchase on my website for only $15.95 US each. Now, these ebooks have been compiled and written by myself, and they outline the sun, the moon, and the ascendant in each sign. So there's 12 colourful ebooks. One, for instance, let's take an example so you're really clear what I'm talking about. Aries. The first one is Aries. So the Aries ebook has Aries sun sign, Aries moon sign, Aries ascendant. Now, if you only know your sun sign, you can purchase one book. If you know your sun, moon, and ascendant and they're all different, you would purchase 3 books. But you might have, say, an Aries sun and an Aries moon, and then, for instance, a Sagittarius ascendant, that would be 2 books. Again, you might want to purchase these as gifts. They would make wonderful gifts. If you purchase more than 6, you'll get a 15% discount. But let's say you think, oh, I'd love to have the full collection, all of them. Then the full price for that would be US $120. This is a saving of over 30%. Some of you might know that I already have an astrology report, and you can order a full report for your sun, moon, and ascendant from a report on my line called the Big Three. This is different. This will give you your personal astrology chart and is a cost of US $19.95. These ebooks are more like a colourful and wonderful way to just explore visually, because with the help of Anita from Sapphire Graphics, I have put these together and I have carefully chosen the graphics to represent your sun, moon, or ascendant. So you can read the information, but you can also see the graphics, which should hopefully pop out of the page and really speak to you as, oh, I dress like that, or yes, that, for want of a better word, that really resonates with me. As I said, though, these particular ebooks I think will also make a wonderful gift. I know I'll be giving them to some of my friends and colleagues, and I hope you will too. I hope you're as excited as I am. You'll see it on my socials. Beware of social spam, because as I said, I'm really excited by these ebooks, and I'm hoping that you will be too. But whatever you do, wherever you go in your astrological journey, I really hope that you look at your sun, moon, and ascendant and see that as a really great starting point. There's so much else that you can cover in astrology, and at times it can be overwhelming, I think. But step by step by step, and it's just a wonderful way of viewing the world. It's been a great gift in my life, and therefore I'm passionate about helping other people as well. And I love it. I have clients who come back again and again and again and who just feel so empowered through astrology. So, thank you for listening to this podcast. I would really like it if you would subscribe, share, review, do whatever you can to get the word out so that we get as many people being introduced to astrology as possible. Thanks for listening. I'm Steph Johnson.